He had his gun, so he just swung it open.
I start to notice that, the atmosphere feels a little bit weird.
First thing he seen was this 6.5 foot tall, broad shoulder, dark hair. That freaked him out.
We hadn't talked to her about like life and death and what any of that means. She's 3 years old,
So we turned around. Suddenly there's a whole tree falling across the road.
And she was describing to us that, there was a deceased person that she could see visually.
You're listening to Cryptid Clues, where we tackle the ever-expanding history and mystery of monsters and supernatural madness every Monday. You can find us at CryptidClues.ca for more information, or even check out exclusive content and support us at patreon.com/CryptidClues. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Cryptid Clues. I'm your host, Reuben, followed by your other also host, Taylor. We have a wonderful, wonderful episode for you today, as we are now at the time of recording, a month into the drone debacle that's happening all over the States. And Taylor just recently covered the UAP UFO conference, so we have lots of fun little talking points today. Taylor, take it away.
Yes, so the full breakdown is available on the previous episode that dropped last week, and bullet points version here, they were talking about a lot of artificial intelligence and different alternatives. They were very much kind of avoiding using the words alien and extraterrestrial. But one thing I just wanted to highlight here was, again, they were talking about, has the government conducted secret crash retrieval programs? Yes or no? Yes. And then were they designed to identify and reverse engineer alien craft? Yes or no? Yes. And those were directed to one of the witnesses, Mr. Elizondo, and those were his answers on official record. Then they also were talking about what each of the witnesses thinks that or believes UAPs could be. All of them had came together and agreed that the federal government is 100% withholding evidence and truth regarding UFOs, UAPs, and there was acknowledgement too that people have been injured by UAP encounters, the reverse engineering, and that the government is actively paying them to keep this quiet and helping with people's recovery as well, just to, again, keep this technology quiet. But as I said, what do you believe UAPs could be or are? Mr. Gallaudet says that strong evidence that they're non-human higher intelligence. Elizondo says that he echoes my colleague's comment. Schellenberger said that he genuinely does not know. And then Gold responded with, don't know, but we must find out. So there's still a lot of mystery. And during this whole hearing, it's unfortunate, but it was to be expected because they pitch certain questions and the responses are, I can't answer that, or I can't answer that in an open setting, and so forth. And that's very frustrating and aggravating. But again, it comes down to asking it in the right way. And if you use the right words, then maybe you can kind of get a little bit more of an open-ended answer that is a little bit kind of like navigating out of that black tape or that classified document or that confidentiality form that these individuals have signed. And that's so far all we have, and hopefully just more hearings like this happen. But you tuned into it, right?
It definitely feels like we have the security clearance to get yes or no answers only. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot more going on behind the scenes than we're aware of, and that can only happen outside of the conference hearings.
That's right. You tuned into this hearing, right?
I've listened to parts of it so far. I haven't listened to the full thing, but I've watched a lot of clips and little sections from it.
Mm-hmm. And on those clips, like you've been seeing a lot of stuff going on in the world here with all of these appearances and such. I'm excited to hear your breakdown and your notes on drones, UFOs, UAPs. Like, what do we call these things right now?
Yeah, that's the big thing that's going on. And it seems that the official answer is kind of all over the place. It's been on American news media and stuff even. And it feels like we're in a back and forth step where we're getting different answers. But the amount of recordings and clips, and unfortunately also the amount of hoaxes and AI generated videos, is so incredibly immense right now. It's absolute insanity online. But in person, I'm not hearing a whole lot from around the rest of the world. It's little bits and pieces of it. And Taylor, you've kind of seen a little bit of it going on, a couple of little clips here and there, right?
Yeah, I've seen a little bit of it, and it just kind of caught me off guard how it just took over by storm and spread like wildfire everywhere. And the internet is one. We get our information for research and stuff through the internet, of course, but it's also a double-edged sword because you can get so much fake stuff, like you mentioned, the AI and everything that's just swooping over, and it's kind of diluting the real footage that is out there and what people might actually really be seeing and are recording. And so how do we know, again, what's real, what's fake? And then people doing drone videos, it's annoying. But there are some people I've been talking to locally here that have been seeing some things. One of my very reliable friends, with his line of work up north, he had people start reporting to him that, hey, we're seeing some things in the sky. This is kind of weird. Now, of course, he attributed to, well, there's so much in the media right now. Maybe that they're just seeing that and then they're just coming forward and trying to talk. But when you're in these small little communities dealing with individuals that don't really tap into the news much, they're focused on their livelihoods, and it's not really a focus, or like other world problems are not really at the forefront of their mind. And then but they come forward and say, hey, I'm seeing lights in the sky, they're moving really weird. That to me holds a little bit more merit than all of these videos that I just can't necessarily confirm or rely on when I see them on the internet, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of people right now, I think, that are opening up in regards to their UFO, UAP kind of experiences. I'll actually have a little encounter from a close acquaintance of mine that shared a story with me about his encounter with a UFO later in the episode. We'll get back to that. But I want to really break into this drone thing. And Taylor, did you notice that this started happening right at the end of the conference? We got that new hearing, and all of a sudden, everything's kind of just blown up.
Yeah, that's right.
So to go into that, this has been happening for about a month now. Right after the UAP conference happened here that Taylor covered in a recent episode, people started noticing a huge increase just out of the blue of orbs and drone-like objects in the sky. And those first few clips that kind of came out were questionable. You were like, well, what is that? It doesn't quite look like a drone. There were a few of them where you've got like the little lights, you've got the little triangles, and the triangles are very common. We've seen those. But then we started getting an explosive amount of orbs just in the sky, like several of them at a time, 10 or 20, people recording them from a couple of different angles, uploading them to Twitter, Facebook, and then the news started commenting on it. And as soon as it hit the news, Fox News, ABC News, CNN even got in on this. They started hosting little clips of these drones and lights in the sky and things going on. And that was the biggest trip for me, was how the White House commented on it. And the White House, they've been assuring us via the news that the drones are a non-issue. Lawful and legal drone flights is how White House National Security Communications Advisor Admiral John Kirby described it several days ago. Now, it's important that we've been having this debacle for like a month. This was described several days ago to kind of reassure people on the news and reporters and stuff that lawful and legal drone flights, right? But is there more to the official story? Because with good reason, the Federal Aviation Administration just restricted drone flights over parts of New Jersey going forward throughout the month of January, even going so far as to threaten the use of deadly force for any drones deemed a security threat. Which we just got a report from the White House that these are lawful and legal drone flights. But they're moving from state to state. So as you get tons and tons of footage of these orbs and sightings, a couple of days will pass. and the next state will blow up and start posting videos, and then the next state will blow up and start posting videos. Like they're just moving across the continent, still leaving some behind. You're still getting videos and clips from the previous, but then you're getting an explosive amount from the next state. And that's probably the most confusing part for people right now. But again, Kirby insists just a combination of hobbyist, commercial, and law enforcement drones. But then you've also got people posting videos of fighter jets scrambling to go after these things up in the sky. And you have these drones coming down closer to the ground and then vanishing way up into space, just way above the clouds, higher than any of our commercial drones can go. So how are they lawful and legal drones? Why would the US military say they have the authority to shoot down drones and feel they pose an imminent security threat if they're lawful and legal? So you've got these two competing sides of the official story from the White House. You have the news reporting on it. And then you have the military stating that they're a threat.
Sorry.
All three of them, they don't agree. You go ahead, Taylor.
Well, how you were describing it, where they say these drones are legal, they are being operated, and it's totally fine. To whereas, okay, no drones allowed to be flying in this airspace, illegal, yada yada yada, and they're not jiving with each other. It does make me think, and maybe I'm jumping ahead, and maybe this is where you were going, but in the movie Signs, when they're watching the TV, they saw, okay, at nighttime, this thing with lights landed over the city, and it was like, oh my gosh, like, we're looking at a spaceship. And then during the daytime, it was invisible, couldn't see anything. But then they were talking about how, okay, this bird is flying, and this bird hit something that you couldn't see in the air, and then just fell down. Thinking, that's making me feel like what you're talking about. Maybe something's there during the day that we can't see, and they're worried about drones crashing in or starting some kind of conflict that they don't want to happen.
Yep, that was freaky. That movie gave me chills when I was a kid, especially the scene at the birthday party where like you feel like you're in behind those children trying to peer over each other out the window to look at this alien walking by the garage.
Yeah.
That will always stick with me as a really freaky moment. As silly as parts of that movie were, that's terrifying to think that this could be the direction if we're heading there with all these like UFO, UAP sightings. But the conflict doesn't end. You even got like various people online, former Pentagon UFO hunters, commenting on these drones and these videos. And when it comes to talking about their conclusion, what they are, what they're doing, they just go, I don't know. They don't know. Either they don't want to comment on it, and there's some amount of cover-up, which I would agree with, since official media has 3 conflicting stories about these things. But it just feels wrong. We don't know where they're from. We don't know where they're going. We don't know who's behind it. We don't think it's foreign adversarial. It's not ours. The bottom line is, it's like the federal government isn't being honest with the American people right now with this. And when the news media is being told 2 separate things from the military and from the White House, it's really evident of that, I would say. Over on the CNN side of things, the Senate Intelligence and Armed Services Committees said, we know whose they are. It's a huge concern. It's a type of technology that our radar didn't detect. So again, more conflict. More stories that don't line up. It makes 0 sense in a way, and it really opens and paves the way for, obviously, conspiracy theories, a lot of fakery. You don't know what's real anymore, what's going on. But the most common thing that I've noticed when browsing through these reels that are being uploaded, these clips and these sightings, is what everything looks like. Now, recently, before the UAP conference happened, we had some kind of a circular orb drone taken by a pilot at an airport down in the States. And people immediately started trying to debunk it. It's a little metal silvery orb, and the pilot records it very blurrily out his window. He takes a couple of photos, one where the window's smattered with rain, one before it gets smattered with rain, and it rests there and shoots up to the sky like a bullet. And people are like, well, was this AI generated? what could this have been? And this orb kind of stands out as not the orbs that we're getting from these videos now, nothing that they really mentioned during the UAP conference, but like this circular metal object. And it almost looks like it's got like a kind of a curved architecture around it to like hold the orb almost in like a hand. But like if the hands were like pointy fingers, I don't know how to describe that. We've got upscaled images of it, but the original footage, the original picture, while blurry, really does show an object on the ground, on the runway at an airport. And if you pass it through some filters, you run it through some tests, you go, okay, could this be AI generated? Could this be fakery? Could this be a hoax? Getting into art and stuff on the side, using things like stability matrix and generating things, I've really come to understand how AI generation works. And we really did just get to a point in the past 2 weeks where video generation is super possible and accessible by the public, is incredibly easy to do. I could generate something easily if I wanted to. But in order to detect and insert into a video, if you prompt a video, you make something from scratch, it's very easy to tell if it's AI generated. You've got the contrast and the lighting, you've got some AI artifacting, you have weird movement and things like that still. So anything with people still doesn't look quite right. But if you wanted to insert an object into a video, you immediately introduce noise. And that's your biggest tell with a lot of these videos, is if something's inserted, it's not fully AI generated, you can add noise to the image or look at the original noise of the image, and you can see the noise of the original video or frame that you're looking at doesn't match the noise of an object that's inserted. It's like going back and looking at the whole did NASA land on the moon kind of a thing, and they open up pictures and they run them through Photoshop, and you see that the moon has like a square around it like it was inserted, or sorry, the Earth. Still early morning for me, my coffee's settling in. You can see that square around it and you can go, okay, there was clearly editing in these. It doesn't answer the question whether something was true or false, whether we really did a thing, but there was editing done. And that's our takeaway from a lot of these videos, is you can tell if there was editing done. Very, very easy to still kind of open up that debunk path, and you can throw a lot of evidence, quote unquote, into the trash. But that orb video before the UAP conference is not one of them. Its noise matches perfectly to the rest of the video. And as far as we can tell, it is not a hoax. So a pilot really did have a metal spherical object about the size of probably a couple of like truck tires, the circumference of those, land in front of him, and then shoot back up into the sky. And he recorded it and uploaded it online. UAP conference happens, and now people are seeing drones and orbs absolutely everywhere. These orbs are the one specific thing that keep getting re-recorded, and they're not like the metal sphere. They are glowing balls of light in the same sense that when you look through a telescope at a star, you get that kind of filtered, watery effect of an orb hanging in the air, suspended, and like an electrical Tesla ball of wires and lightning all around it, and it doesn't move. But these orbs look just like those stars and are moving around in the sky. Sometimes recorded clearly enough, because people have S24 Ultras and crazy zoom lenses and stuff, that if you zoom close enough into the orb, not only can you see all those wires and currents going through it, you can almost make out an object dead center. And the creepiest part about these are those objects come in 3 flavors: circular, triangular, and cigar-shaped. And there's not a lot of those videos where you can see inside the orbs. There's a lot of videos where you can just see the orbs. But it's something they all have in common, whereas a lot of the hoaxes and things that are getting debunked quickly are super clear motherships, UFOs with lights spinning around, people running in panic and stuff like that. Those ones aren't real. But these videos of orbs and balls of light in the sky, there's so many of them. It is so hard to not believe that there is a non-human intelligence kind of circling around in the sky right now above our heads, slowly moving from state to state with 10 to 30 in a video at a time. And it's not like Starlink where you see like a strip going across the sky. They are coming out of one ball, flying around the air. Somebody flies a drone up into the sky and you see an orb shoot out a couple little orbs, and those two little orbs go zip over to the drone and inspect it. So there's an intelligence to these things. You've watched a couple videos, Taylor. Which ones have you noticed recently?
Well, you sent me some that bear very similar resemblance to religious paintings. And then there's been some of the earlier ones out of New Jersey that I watched too, of just these things moving around. And of course, a lot of the fake ones. One that I'm not particularly proud of that I saw was clearly man-made drones, 4 of them hovering around a guy. And you could see him holding up like a phone in front of him, like he's pretending he's recording. But you can see on his screen, it's the drone's camera looking at him, and it's the drone controller. Just...
Yeah.
People are just going way too far overboard with this. But like I said, a lot of other things of these lights moving erratically and doing things that regular man-made drones, to my knowledge, cannot do yet, and pulling off speeds that are just not accessible to through our technology yet. It's just very erratic, quick moving objects. But the balls of light, I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole, but I'm just going to mention it worth of note. It's funny how that can tie into Sasquatch and other things when you're out in the woods, balls of light, and people have talked about seeing sometimes in these balls of light maybe what looks like an operator of some kind. But again, that's a whole other can of worms. That could be going into like Fae or other things, and like the woods are its own thing. But it's just funny how there's similar notes when we're talking about
Very
now this
similar.
where you're dealing with these lights that are moving around and you see different shapes inside them, and it always seems to be those same recurring ones, the cigar shape, like the triangle shape, and that's what's being reported in other sightings. And you mentioned how before this hearing the pilot had an experience. I put so much stock in airline pilots, because they're seeing things that we don't get to see. Like most of the time we're in the back of a plane if we're up there with them and we're not seeing it, or maybe they're cargo delivery plane pilots. Like they're up there, they're seeing things. And we did an episode earlier this year where it was a huge thing in central Canada, where you have Air Canada, you have Flair Airlines, Morningstar, and they were all talking on the radio together about how, hey, do you see these things? Oh, that's not us. Oh, that's not us. And these things are flying around, moving around their planes, and the pilots are just watching, and all they can do is talk and report about it. But there's still there's headway, but there's not necessarily a very reliable reporting system in place, I would say, yet for stuff like this, at least where things can be done about it. So that's kind of where I'm at on everything so far. And as far as like the actual like sightings go with these videos and what I've seen, the latest one would have been what you had sent me in connection to that religious painting.
Yeah. Very, very similar in the little contrails that came out of a couple of those clips. The biggest thing for me, you mentioned with, you didn't want to get into it much with the Bigfoot and orbs in general, but it really feels like to me it ties these sightings, these orbs, and all of these stories together as a supernatural origin, something else going on, whether that's interdimensional, whether that's supernatural, spiritual, but there's something that's a commonality between all of these fantastical cryptids and sightings and UFOs that don't necessarily point towards outer space for me, but point to something here in our reality that stems from somewhere we can't see, somewhere we can't access, some kind of veil that they come out from behind. And the fact that there's those UFOs and sightings that happen from the ocean and they shoot out from them, they're most likely a section or a selection of them coming from our planet, not necessarily just the skies. So they come from below and from above, and they look the same. Are they the same on the same side? Are they all the same entities? We don't know, but we have those cigar shapes, those triangle shapes, the orbs. It looks like they can all disguise themselves in balls of light, whether that's some kind of energy field or some form of propulsion, who knows? It is absolutely fascinating. And I'm very excited to see where it goes and a little concerned, not going to lie. It's a little freaky how much of it's going on right now. Heading into 2025, you've got some older conspiracy theories that pointed towards the year 2025. You've got the, what's that old Vatican artifact that could supposedly see through time? And one of the stories tied to it was a disclosure in 2025 of other races and stuff revealing themselves to humanity.
You're asking the wrong guy. I could
Oh,
not
sorry.
tell
Okay,
you.
going down the rabbit hole right there with the Matrix pills. But there's like little things like that that are now resurfacing and coming back, and we're probably just going to get past them and nothing's going to happen. That'd be the human way to continue on here.
Well,
But it's just wild.
It is wild, and I like how you use the word veil. I think that there's a lot of merit to saying it like that. There's something that we just can't access, we can't see, and this is that veil that's just there. And there's a lot of people that I talk to that all stem from different kind of beliefs and different positions and perspectives on this. But I think it does kind of come down to a veil, and they talk about it in their own way, something that we just can't kind of access or get behind yet, and these things do. And you mentioned something about how these things all look the same, whether it's on land or it's in the air, it's in water. And I don't know, have you seen the USS Omaha footage? Because I have a clip here of something.
I have not.
You have not? Okay, I'm going to play this. This is from July 2019, and I played it on last week's episode. They were highlighting it in the hearing that they did earlier this month, or in November. So I'm going to play this for you. Audio listeners, you'll hear the dialogue, and then video listeners, you can see here on the YouTube as I pull it up. So here we go.
Splashing your bearing around.
Sure. You got 2 minutes, 3 knots.
Keep going, bro.
We're making 10, so we could probably bring that 35 relative. Sir.
Yeah.
We got a lot of white water out there, so 6 foot swells.
Whoa, it's getting close.
Yeah, we have 31 knots sustained wind, topside, gust of 40.
Whoa, splashed. Mark bearing and range.
It's like it just disappeared.
Exactly. And you can hear them talking about the height of the waves, the basically the weather they're dealing with out there. And yeah, this thing that they've got locked on their thermal, it just splashes down and disappears, just goes beneath the waves there. And this is a very reoccurring thing that's happening a lot out there right now.
And you said this came from 2019, and it kind of takes me back to what these orbs could be. And we've been seeing things like this in the sky for a long, long time. Getting little clips from here and there that quickly get debunked or thrown away is not very important. It's pulled in by people in the UFO community who focus in on that and go, well, you know, this looks like a legitimate clip. We should hold on to this. How can they be drones? Unless they're specifically making drones to disguise themselves as UAP UFO sightings. Why would they? So, are they trying to cause mass hysteria or panic? Is there a foreign intelligence here that's purposefully putting something in the skies? Why make something that we've been seeing for years?
That's right.
But it's a good cover-up to say, oh no, it's just drones. It could be coming from a foreign country. Could be that there's some kind of a spying or an attack that's going on. Moving from state to state, being so visible to the public is super weird.
Well, and we had that, right? With the weather balloon. That was deemed like, oh, it was a spying device from China or something like that, right? That was a whole debacle for people thinking it was a UFO, UAP or something like that. But it was multiple weather balloons apparently flying around across in Canada and across the States. And so is that the best that humanity has? Is some large apparatus like that that's just flying and can be shot down?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in comparison to a drone.
I don't have the locations with me, but in my list, it's noted here that some of these orb and drone sightings, with all the mass hysteria that's going on in the States for it, there are some happening in foreign countries. Not as many. Not as many are being reported. Not as many are being uploaded. But it's not just America that it's coming from. There's a lot less of it coming from around the world. And those could just as easily also be people wanting to chime in, join in on the fun, or it could be legitimate orb UFO drone sightings happening that they're uploading little clips from. Are these things going to leave after they get through the last state? Are they going to come up to Canada? Are they going to go over to Europe? Are they going to start appearing more and more frequently everywhere? Because it hasn't slowed down. It has only picked up. But it's going to be very interesting to see where this takes us going into the new year and everything.
Absolutely. And it seems like as soon as we get into that new year, that's typically when there is a bit of a spike, that January to February time period. At least in the past few years, that's what I feel like there has been. I mean, we've had, back when Trump was voted out of office the first time, he had it so that while there's new COVID bill that he was working on, I can't remember all the specifics of it, so I'm going to be very light on how I mention it, but he put forward all of those classified UFO UAP documents into the community. That was for some reason attached to this bill that was focused on dealing with the COVID and everything along those lines. And so that was very peculiar. But then you have, again, the flights that I mentioned with the pilots seeing things around that time last year. And then you have other things too, other sightings, other documents that have just been coming out. And it just seems like the new year is definitely a prominent time of activity for it. And as you said, 2025, there are some things that might be foreshadowed. It'll be interesting to see what really does happen as we move into this new year with this. And I hope that a lot of it doesn't get diluted because of all this fakery that's accessible by everyone trying to cash in. It's just, it's appalling. It really is.
I can open up my feeds right now and see more and more of these things popping up. I can refresh my feed and there's new videos. Right now in Florida, we're getting drones absolutely everywhere, orbs absolutely everywhere. There's one clip I'm looking at right now where you have these entities in the sky beaming light, kind of like a flashlight beam almost, down onto a cemetery, and police officers are rolling up saying, y'all better get straight with God, bro. Go back inside. Just sending people back into their homes. Triangular UFOs over in Holland shooting into enormous speeds and just taking off. Like, it's an endless feed of, is this real? Is the algorithm pointing more and more stuff out to me just because I've been looking at it?
It's like we've got a lot of people here that, again, they're doing it for hits on their feeds and their channels. We got a lot of people that probably just don't believe and are just getting into it now and are like terrified and whatnot. But at the end of the day, I mean, we've had confirmation, but that's a very biased position of me to kind of put forward, and it is my own perspective. I feel like we've had confirmation, not of extraterrestrials, but of UFOs, UAPs, and these things that are not man-made or of this earth for a while. And whether that is AI, whether that is some other form of intelligence, again, I just don't believe that this is man-made, unidentified flying objects. I think that it is something else, and it's just, like I said, it just sucks to have these videos diluting it.
And eyewitnesses, so many of them going on. I have people near me that I truly believe that have shared their stories with me. I have one here from an acquaintance of mine. His name is Carl. He gave me his UFO experience quite some time ago, but just recently put it into a little email for me to share. I'm very happy that he's given me permission to share this story. This comes back from in 1980. And I think it would be a great way to kind of end our session today talking about UAPs and UFOs with a very real UFO experience that happened back when Carl was 7 years old. So I'll get right into it here. And I'm going to quote directly from this email here for the whole story. It was just after Christmas in 1980 in Kirby, which is a suburb of Liverpool in the northwest of England. I was 7 years old, and my father and I had just been visiting my uncle and his family, and we're getting the evening bus back home. It was night, very dark, and about 7 p.m. We were waiting at a bus stop with an elderly couple. After being there for 5 minutes, the old guy exclaimed, "Would you look at that?" And behind us was maybe a 20-story high apartment block, and approximately 400 feet above it was a huge cigar-shaped UFO. It was rounded at both ends and had very bright lighted strips running along its length of several different colors, but not like a rainbow. The scale of this thing was massive, easily 200 feet long and wide, almost like the dimensions of a large bologna sausage at the deli. The light radiated from it, and even though the night was dark, it was clear. We couldn't see a gondola hanging from it, of any rear fins, cables, or propellers, which afterwards we all thought we would have been able to see if they were there. There was a low-level buzzing noise, almost like static in the air, as it stayed there for a good couple of minutes. There was no other sound, no sound of engines, etc. During this time, we were silent as a group, just mesmerized by the sight. It started to move forward slowly at first, and then it seems to speed up, and then it disappeared. Not into the distance. It just disappeared. Again, the night was clear, and talking to my father about it years later, we felt that if the lights had gone out, we would have still seen the darkened shape. We often spoke about it, confirming each other's memory of the experience. The next day, my father and I were in a taxi, and the driver told us that there had been many sightings of a UFO the previous night across the city, and something was seen even as far south as Devon that same evening. Thank you to Carl for sharing that experience. Absolutely wonderful. And you can really feel the vibe from it, that energy that puts you in the moment. It makes me feel like I'm back to watching one of those experiences or reading an encounter from like a report that puts me right there to be a witness.
Yeah, that was really, really fascinating. Thank you very much for bringing that to the show. I was just curious what the distance was between, it was Liverpool and Devon, correct?
Mm-hmm.
That's a 4-hour and 37-minute drive. And if you're walking, well, it looks like that's an 89-hour walk, 250 miles, basically. So if we're dealing with the same object, that's pretty impressive. That's a lot of
That's
a long
pretty
distance.
immense.
Yeah.
And right now, with all these sightings and orbs, getting into people looking at these orbs up close where you can see inside of them, the cigar shapes are a common one.
Mm-hmm.
Little circles or triangles. Also, the fact that there's a couple of these videos. There's not a lot of them. So we could separate these and maybe put them to the side as maybe being edited or just timed randomly. You've also got a couple of videos where people are talking to these orbs when they're hanging up in the sky, seeming to get responses from them. One lady has a religious experience where she starts talking to this orb in the sky, and it's not doing anything. It doesn't have like the wires or the pulses or the electrical currents. It's just glowing in the sky. And she zoomed right in on it. And then she goes, "Do you know of Jesus?" And all of a sudden it starts pulsating and going absolutely crazy. And then it calms down. And she has this conversation with it where every time she mentions God, in a sense, it starts to respond to her. Whether that's positive or negative as a response, we don't know. It could have been edited. It could have been good timing with her comments. It could have just been pulsating randomly. But again, going into the intelligence of these things, the spirituality of these things, going back through paintings and stuff that I've sent you that have orbs in the sky with those little contrails. And we've seen a couple of videos with those contrails, not a lot of them. There's really something more than meets the eye that's going on here.
Well, I'm really happy you said that, because you just reminded me. During the conference, one of the speakers put forward a question that really did go unanswered by our witnesses. And she basically was asking, why is it that when people have these experiences, they will basically fall back on their faith with Jesus, with God, and they will actually use those names, and then these things stop, their experiences stop, and it ceases it. Very, very interesting. And whether or not some of these things are bad and they're trying to get in, because again, where that line is drawn between demons and angels and then UFOs, UAPs, that's a whole other can of worms. But there is, whether it's a very fine line or a very big rope, there is something that is connecting that all together between UFOs, UAPs, maybe extraterrestrials, and religion, and like you said, these paintings and all these different depictions. There is, in my opinion, everyone is entitled to their own opinion, absolutely. But the way I see it, I truly feel in my heart that there is undeniably something that really ties it together. So, yeah, and I think that's it. That's done. Episode, cash, boom, check.
That is everything. I think I've run out of talking points, and now it's just a matter of looking up at the skies and keeping a close eye on internet reels and feeds to see what's real and what's not.
Yeah, my uncle has a huge, massive telescope that he bought, brand new, and he doesn't use it all that much. I'm thinking, I would love to just take that home for a few days and just use it, maybe see what I can see. I don't know what I'm doing and what kind of mindset you need going into it to be looking at the stars and how to kind of catalog where things are. But I would love just to use it and just look up, because it's a really powerful telescope. And maybe I'll see something flying around if I'm getting reports of northern British Columbia that there's some sightings. So
Absolutely. We even got the ISS cutting its feed again because they're looking at these orbs and objects.
Cutting their feed, of course.
Yeah, but it's the same things we're seeing in the sky. So
yeah,
that's just more confirmation for me. All right, Taylor. Thank you very much for another wonderful episode. Do you want to take us away here?
Take us home. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, you can find us with... basically, all of the links below on our social media, our YouTube, X, Facebook, so forth. If you want to reach out, you can do so via CryptidClues@gmail.ca. It's getting through Christmas time. Gmail.com, thank you. I've done so much podcasting this week. It's been absolutely crazy. And my mind is kind of going against me. I can't wait. It's Christmas break coming up, and I'm really, really looking forward to it. So, yeah, other than that, tune in because we got special Christmas stuff coming your way, and we'll be seeing you in the new year. So have a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and take care, stay safe, stay warm. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.